Previously, we saw the Passover event with the destruction of the firstborn. This was the final miracle, and they have finally been allowed to leave. But they're not just allowed to leave, they're being kicked out. And the Egyptians are sending them away with gold, silver, and jewels. For they just want them to go, and this is back pay for all those decades of being slaves. And they didn't really have that much time to prepare, so they got their sandals on, they girded up their loins, and they're out. They're making their move. Exodus 13:1. The Lord said to Moses, 13:2. Sanctify, consecrate, set apart to me all the firstborn males. Whatever is first to open the womb among the Israelites, both man and beast, is mine. So here we have the idea of setting the firstborn apart from the rest, so that there's a significance to the firstborn and the first fruits. We see more of this later on when it comes to giving to the Lord. You know, the Lord doesn't want your leftovers. He doesn't want the rejects. He wants the best that you can offer. And so that's why it's the firstborns, because the firstborn is the most significant. Exodus 13:3. And Moses said to the people, earnestly remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage and bondsmen. For the strength of the hand of the Lord brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. We saw previously when it talked about the Feast of Unleavened Bread being the week that follows after Passover as a ceremonial remembrance of this time that's occurring right now here in the book of Exodus, that they were in such a hurry to leave they didn't bring the leaven to leaven their bread, and leaven in the scriptures is kind of a sign of corruption. So this is like a holy event that they're not going to do the leaven. They're not going to puff up the bread with the bubbles or whatever from the bacteria. This is purity of form, purity of essence. So we got the two together, right? The sanctifying and the consecration of the firstborn, and not eating the leavened bread. Exodus 13:4. This day you go forth in the month of Abib. Exodus 13:5. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he promised and swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of plenty. You shall keep this service in this month. So this has been reiterated several times now with the idea of consecration to these holy days and the Passover event and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And here Moses is explaining just the significance to the people that are with him, the Hebrew people. What is going on here? What was this event that they just witnessed? And how this needs to be remembered for the rest of existence, for generations. Exodus 13:6. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and the seventh day shall be a feast to the Lord. 13:7. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, neither shall there be leaven in all your territory. 13:8. You shall explain to your son that on this day this is done because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. 13:9. It shall be a sign to you upon your hand as a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. So what we have here is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we have the Passover event taking place, and then afterwards we have a week where they only eat unleavened bread. So bread that has not risen. There's no yeast in it or sourdough starter or whatever to bubble up the bread. I guess no baking powder as well. The bread is just simply unleavened. A bread that has no bubbles in it. course, the second portion of this is the idea of passing this information on to the next generation. So generation after generation gets taught about the Passover event, as well as what is being spoken of right here, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the 7 days of unleavened bread, as a memorial to the consecration of the firstborn and that time when leaving Egypt, when they didn't have time to prepare and they could only eat unleavened bread. Exodus 13:10, you shall therefore keep this ordinance at this time from year to year. 13:11, and when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he promised and swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you. 13:12, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb, all the firstlings of your livestock that are males shall be the Lord's. 13:13, every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem by substituting for it a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, then you shall break its neck. And every firstborn among your sons shall you redeem. So God has possession of the firstborn. He takes ownership of. So when that donkey gives birth, and there's a male donkey, the firstborn donkey that donkey ever had, God is the owner of that donkey. Then we have the idea of redeeming it. So you give this lamb to the Lord, a sacrifice of a lamb, and it's done in place of the life of the donkey, so then you get the donkey back. And if you're not going to redeem it, well then break the donkey's neck, and then you can have the next one. But it would probably make more sense financially and logically just to give that lamb to the Lord so that you can have possession of the donkey. And later on we see the idea of the firstborn and paying tribute or sacrificing or a substitution or a redemption of the son. And we see that later on. There's no snapping of the neck of the child or anything like that. God's not into human sacrifice or child sacrifice for that matter. But there is the idea that the Lord possesses and kind of takes ownership or consecrate or separated to him the firstborn, so that it needs to be redeemed. And some of that's symbolic, but some of that is literal as well. Exodus 13:14, and when in time to come your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by strength of the hand of the Lord brought us up out from Egypt, from the house of bondage and bondsmen. 13:15, for when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and livestock. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that the first open the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. 13:16, and it shall be as a reminder upon your hand, or as frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. This certainly is a high level of dedication required upon by the Hebrew people, by the Lord. First we have this annual sacrifice with the Passover event, followed by the week of unleavened bread, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And we have the ceremony with the firstborns and the redeeming factor. And the redeeming factor of the firstborn of the animals as well. So this all kind of leads to a tight connection between the Hebrews and the Lord himself. Something that he is always going to be around and a part of, except for those times when the Hebrews are in disobedience to the Lord and not following what he has outlined here and will outline later on. Exodus 13:17, when Pharaoh let the people go, God led them not by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer. For God said, unless the people change their purpose when they see war, and return to Egypt. 13 and 18. But God led the people around by way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea, and the Israelites went up, marshaled in ranks, out of the land of Egypt. So the Lord is leading the people out of Egypt, leading them to a new land, leading them to the land of Canaan, the promised land. But he's not taking the direct route. He doesn't want the Israelites to see this war and carnage. For the Philistines, they're at war at this juncture in time, and that would not be good for them to see that. They just escaped slavery, and if they see that it could be even worse out in the form of war, maybe they want to go back to Egypt and just stay there for eternity, and God doesn't want that to happen. So he's leading them through the wilderness. Now, the wilderness does provide some level of cover and protection. It might not necessarily be the most preferred way to travel, but this is the route that they are going. This is the route the Lord is leading them towards the Red Sea. So they're taking the back roads, so to say. They're taking the back road up to Canaan, the promised land, the land of milk and honey, the land of plenty. Exodus 13 and 19. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had strictly sworn the Israelites, saying, surely God will be with you, and you must carry my bones away from here with you. Ah, yes, that's right. Joseph died in the land of Egypt, and they embalmed him in preparation for this journey here. 500 years later, or 400, I guess he lived a long time. He was dead for several hundred years at this juncture in time, but he was preserved, for he was embalmed in the style of the Egyptians. They looked after him. It was so anyway, there we go. Although it refers to him as bones, so maybe there's not any flesh on him anymore. Not that that really matters. Anyway, they're taking him out of Egypt, so bury him with his father, so that's kind of cool. They didn't forget about him. They didn't leave Joseph behind. Exodus 13 and 20. They journeyed from Succoth and encamped in Etham on the edge of the wilderness. So they've continued their journey, and they're kind of camping for the night, or maybe a couple nights, get a little bit of rest in. They've made some distance from Egypt. Exodus 13:21. The Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. 13:22. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. So here we have the Lord leading the Hebrew people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. And he's leading them as a cloud. He's flying in the air, and they're just kind of following after him, traveling by day. And then by night, he's a pillar of fire. I don't know if there was a period of transforming from one to the other. It's like, oh, well, it's night now. Now he's a fire pillar, or how that worked exactly, but I don't know. He's leading the way. He's not letting them get lost. How cool is that?